The digital clock in the corner of my monitor glowed 11:47 p.m. Outside, Chicago was a silent, glittering web of light stretching to a horizon I couldn't see. From 40 floors up, the city looked peaceful, orderly. My office, a glass-walled box inside a larger glass-walled box, was supposed to be my launchpad into that world, a symbol of arrival. Tonight, it just felt empty. The only sounds were the low hum of the server room down the hall and the soft, rhythmic click of my mouse as I scrubbed through the security footage. Click. Rewind. Play. Click. Pause. My supervisor, Ms. Albright, had called the Arthur Peterson case a nothing burger. A pro bono assignment meant to teach me the ropes of client intake and basic defense strategy. An eccentric old man wandering into nice houses, she'd said, not even looking up from her own files. He doesn't take anything. It's a glorified trespassing charge. Get him a plea deal, maybe some mandatory counseling. An easy win for your portfolio, Hayes. Easy, right. I'd met him for the first time that afternoon. The interview room at the Cook County Jail smelled of bleach and regret. Arthur Peterson didn't look like a criminal, eccentric or otherwise. He was maybe 60, with kind, watery blue eyes and thin, flyaway white hair. He wore the standard orange jumpsuit, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity, folding his cuffed hands neatly on the metal table between us. He looked like someone's grandfather. He was polite. He answered my questions clearly. No, he didn't know the homeowners. No, he hadn't intended to cause any harm. He just liked to look at their things. He said it with such simple sincerity that I almost believed him. For a moment, I felt a pang. Then, as I was packing my leather briefcase, he tilted his head. His gaze wasn't on my face, but a few inches below my chin. "That's a lovely tie, son," he said, his voice soft. "Oh, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Brooks Brothers, isn't it? The silk rep stripe. I'd wager you bought it at the Michigan Avenue store. They display them by the west entrance." I stopped. My hand froze on the latch of my briefcase. He was right. About all of it, down to the exact location within the store I'd bought it from last month. A cold little knot tightened in my stomach. It was just an observation, a random, lucky guess from an old man with a good eye. That's what I told myself. "You have a good eye," I managed to say, forcing a smile that felt brittle. He just smiled back, a gentle, knowing sort of smile. I notice things. It's important to notice things. Now, hours later, his voice echoed in my head. I notice things. Click. Forward. Play. I was on the fourth house now, a sprawling Tudor in Lincoln Park. The timestamp on the footage read 2:13 a.m. Peterson moved through the dark home with an unsettling calm, like he was a guest, not an intruder. He didn't rush, he didn't rifle through drawers. He just moved. He walked into the living room, a cavernous space with a large stone fireplace. On the mantel sat a row of framed family photos. Peterson picked one up, a smiling couple with 2 young kids on a beach. He didn't look at it for long. He just turned it face down and set it carefully back in its place. My breath hitched. I rewound the tape from the first house. Same thing. A different photo, this one of a teenage girl in a graduation gown, was turned to face the wall. This wasn't just wandering. This was a ritual. I pushed back from my desk, the leather of my chair groaning in the silence. I needed coffee, or maybe a walk.
anything to shake the creeping feeling that was crawling up my spine. My gaze fell on my own reflection in the dark glass of the office window. A pale, tired-looking kid in a suit suspended against the backdrop of a million distant lights. For the first time, being this high up, this exposed on all sides by glass, didn't feel powerful. It felt like being in a fishbowl. I shook my head. Come on, Hayes, get a grip. You're overtired, reading too much into nothing. It's a nothing burger case. I sat back down, determined to finish. I skipped ahead on the footage from the second house. The homeowner had cameras in almost every room. Peterson was in the master bathroom. He opened the medicine cabinet, didn't touch the prescription bottles, but took out a small, pink toothbrush. A child's toothbrush.
He then walked into the parents' pristine, all-white bathroom down the hall and placed the small pink brush right next to the two adult ones in a porcelain holder. A happy little family of 3. A message, not of theft, but of violation. I was here. I touched the things you love. My throat felt dry as desert sand. I took a swig of cold, bitter coffee from the mug on my desk, my favorite mug. A heavy ceramic one my sister had given me, with a stupid cartoon owl on it. Then I saw it. In every single piece of footage. The last act before he left. In the first house, a blue ceramic mug placed right in the center of the living room rug. In the second house, a white porcelain teacup set perfectly in the middle of the polished hallway floor. In the third, a heavy glass stein sitting on the cold kitchen tile like a lone chess piece. And now, in the fourth house, as I watched Peterson's shadowy figure retreat out the back door, my eyes locked on the object he'd left behind. A single, dark coffee cup, placed with surgical precision in the very center of the floor. It was his signature, his calling card. A quiet, terrifying declaration. My own mug felt unnaturally heavy in my hand. He wasn't just breaking into houses. He was staging them. He was telling a story, and I was suddenly horribly certain that I didn't want to know how it ended. That's when my phone buzzed. The sound shattered the quiet of the office. It was a loud, angry vibration against the polished wood of my desk. I jumped, nearly spilling my coffee. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. My thumb hovered over the notification. It's just spam, a wrong number. It has to be. But my hand was shaking. I knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that it wasn't spam. I tapped the screen. The message was one short line. "Working late, aren't you, Mr. Hayes? Don't strain your eyes." The air left my lungs in a rush. I stood up so fast, my chair shot back and slammed into the credenza behind me. The sound was like a gunshot in the dead quiet. I looked around the office. The rows of empty desks. The dark, silent computer monitors. The floor-to-ceiling windows. The entire city was laid out before me. 1 billion points of light. 1 billion windows. And in one of them, someone was watching me. Right now. Knew I was here. Knew my name. He notices things. I stared down at the street, 40 stories below. The cars were just tiny streaming lights. The people were invisible. But I could feel an unseen gaze on me, a physical pressure against my skin. The glass that was meant to give me a commanding view of the world now felt like it was magnifying me, putting me on display for a private audience of one.
My first impulse was to run to the window and yank the blinds shut, to hide myself from that invisible stare. But I stopped. It was too late for that. The feeling of being watched wasn't coming from outside anymore. It wasn't from a window across the street or a telescope in a distant building. The threat was already inside. It was here, in my hand. A small, black rectangle of glass and metal that felt colder and heavier than it ever had before. I was holding it. I had let him in. I didn't sleep. I don't think I even blinked. I spent the hours until dawn sitting on my sofa, staring at my phone on the coffee table as if it were a venomous snake. The message glowed in the dark. "Working late, aren't you, Mr. Hayes? Don't strain your eyes." I read it over and over until the words lost all meaning and became just shapes. I considered calling the police. And say what? A man I'm legally obligated to defend sent me a vaguely weird text message? They'd laugh. By the time the first gray light of morning filtered through the blinds, I was running on nothing but stale coffee and a raw, simmering dread. The city was waking up, the sounds of traffic and life returning, but it felt distant, like listening to a radio in another room. I was in a bubble of my own cold air. Walking into the office building was different. The soaring marble lobby, usually a source of pride, felt like the entrance to a pristine, well-lit tomb. The security guard I nodded to every morning suddenly looked like a stranger. Every person who shared the elevator with me was a potential observer. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor indicator, feeling the back of my neck prickle. My desk was exactly as I had left it. Neat, organized.
My law books stacked at a perfect right angle, my pens aligned in their holder, a testament to a control I no longer felt. But there was one thing wrong, one thing that didn't belong. Sitting precisely in the center of my leather desk blotter was a small, square box, wrapped in simple, elegant navy blue paper. It was tied with a white ribbon, the bow perfectly symmetrical. It looked expensive. It looked intentional. For a long moment, I just stood there, my briefcase handle slick in my sweaty palm. My first thought was that it was from Ms. Albright. Maybe a welcome to the firm gesture, though it was months late for that. But I knew, deep in the pit of my stomach, where the coffee and fear were churning, I knew who it was from. My hands were shaking as I unwrapped it. I was careful not to tear the paper. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me was trying to pretend this was normal, a gift to be opened with care. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, was a tie. It was a silk rep stripe, identical in style and quality to the one I'd worn yesterday, Brooks Brothers. But this one was a deep, dark navy blue, the color of a bruise, the color of the deep ocean. There was no card, no note, nothing. Just the tie, lying there like a coiled serpent. "Morning, Alex." I flinched, snapping the lid back on the box. It was Sarah Albright, my supervising attorney, coffee mug in hand. She raised an eyebrow at my reaction. "Jumped a bit there, Hayes. Burning the midnight oil got you on edge?" she asked, a small teasing smile on her lips. I swallowed, trying to find my voice. "Ms. Albright, did you leave this on my desk?" I motioned to the box. She leaned over, her perfume cutting through the sterile office air. "No, wasn't me. What is it?" "A tie." She glanced inside. "Oh, that's nice. Let me guess, Mr. Peterson?" The name hit me like a physical blow.
The fact that she'd said it so casually, so easily, made the whole situation feel insane. I don't know. There was no note. Of course it is, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. He's probably just grateful to have a bright young man like you on his case. It's a nice gesture, a bit old-fashioned, but nice. Don't read too much into it. Her tone was final, the one she used when a topic was closed. I need those discovery motions for the Henderson case by noon, she added, already turning and walking toward her own glass-walled office. Don't read too much into it. The words echoed in my head, mocking me. I walked over to the reception desk in a daze. Maria, the eternally cheerful receptionist, was sorting mail. Maria, hey, did you happen to see who left a package on my desk this morning? She looked up, her smile unwavering. A package? No, sorry, Alex. No one came up who wasn't an employee before you got here. Maybe a courier dropped it yesterday evening after I left. But the cleaning crew would have reported it. Security would have seen it. There was no record, no explanation. It had just appeared. An object had crossed from his world into mine, materializing in the one place I was supposed to be safe. I can get to you. Anytime. Anywhere. I sat back down at my desk, the tie box sitting there like a piece of unexploded ordnance. I pushed it to the far corner, underneath a stack of files, but I was aware of it all morning. A cold spot on my desk. The Henderson motions blurred before my eyes. Discovery, due process, the bedrock principles of the legal system. They felt like a joke. How could I focus on the structured, logical world of law when my own reality was fraying at the edges? I couldn't. I pushed the Henderson file aside. I opened the firm's legal research database, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Not case law. News archives. Public records. Arthur Peterson. Born 1962. I started in Illinois, tracing him back. Cook County. A few minor loitering charges a decade ago, all dropped. Nothing else. It was too clean. This man didn't just appear out of thin air at age 50. I expanded the search. Peterson was a common name, but I had his date of birth. I cross-referenced it with address history. And then I found it. A voter registration record from 10 years prior, in Salem, Oregon. The knot in my stomach tightened. I ran a new search. Arthur Peterson, Salem, Oregon. Criminal record. Nothing. Just a parking ticket. But then I tried something else. Something whispered to me by the image of the child's toothbrush.
I searched for unsolved crimes in the Salem area during the years he lived there, specifically missing persons. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A name popped up. Markham, David, age 26, reported missing 2014. He was a junior architect, lived alone in a downtown apartment, vanished on his way home from work. His car was found in his designated parking spot. His keys were on the kitchen counter. No signs of forced entry. He was just gone. The article included a photo, a smiling young man with dark hair and a confident grin. He could have been one of my classmates. It was a coincidence. It had to be. I dug deeper. Before Oregon, Peterson had lived in Phoenix, Arizona, from 2008 to 2012. I ran the same search. Unsolved missing persons. Phoenix. Young male professionals. Another hit. Castillo, Ruben, age 28, reported missing 2011. A dental hygienist. Lived alone. His disappearance was identical. He went to work, came home, and ceased to exist. His lunch for the next day was packed in the fridge.
My breath was coming in short, sharp gasps. My office, once a quiet sanctuary, now felt like it was shrinking around me. The low hum of the air conditioning sounded like a predator's growl. One more. I had to know. Before Arizona, an address in Tallahassee, Florida. Cowan, Samuel, age 25, reported missing 2007. A paralegal, fresh out of school, lived alone. Same story. A ghost, a life erased with surgical precision. I printed everything. The news articles, the blurry photos of the smiling, vanished young men. Men who looked like me. Men who were starting their lives in gleaming cities, just like me. I took a highlighter and started circling the similarities. Lived alone. No forced entry. Professionals, ages 25 to 28. Cases went cold immediately. And in the center of each of these time frames, like a spider in a web, was Arthur Peterson, a quiet, grandfatherly man with a penchant for trespassing and a clean record. I gathered the papers, my hands no longer shaking but rigid with a terrible certainty. This wasn't paranoia. This was a pattern, a hunting ground that moved every few years. Sarah had to see this. She had to. I knocked on her door, not waiting for a reply before I walked in. She was on the phone, and she shot me a look of pure annoyance. She held up one finger, telling me to wait, and finished her call with brisk efficiency. This had better be good, Hayes. I'm billing a client $200 just for the time you're standing there. I didn't care. I spread the articles out on her immaculate glass desk. It's Peterson, I said, my voice low and urgent. Look, he moves every 4 or 5 years, and everywhere he lives, a young man who fits a certain profile goes missing. No witnesses, no evidence. The police are stumped. I pointed to the highlighted sections. Look, at the dates. He was there, every single time. Sarah stared at the papers, then up at me. Her expression wasn't one of shock or concern. It was something worse. It was pity, mixed with exasperation. "Alex," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "what do you think you're doing? I'm showing you that he's not just some harmless old man who wanders into houses. He's a predator. I think he's a serial killer." The words sounded loud and clumsy in the quiet of her office. She leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers, her eyes cold. "And what, exactly, does this have to do with us? With this firm? With your job?" "What does it? He's my client. He's targeting me. The text message, the tie." "Stop." The word was sharp, a crack of a whip. "Let me be perfectly clear. Your job, the one we are paying you for, is to provide a legal defense for Arthur Peterson on the charge of misdemeanor criminal trespass. That is all. Your job is not to waste the firm's resources playing detective. Your job is not to build a case against your own client. Do you have any idea how many ethical lines you are crossing right now? But he's dangerous. Then the Chicago PD can handle it if and when he does something illegal in their jurisdiction. Right now, your professional and ethical duty is to him, to the man who is counting on you for his defense. Get the Henderson motions done and get this junk off my desk." She swept the papers into a messy pile and pushed them toward me. Her face was a mask of professional disapproval. I had failed the test. I wasn't a keen, promising lawyer. I was an unstable, emotional intern.
A liability. I stood there for a second, my whole body numb. The door was closed. Not just her office door, but every door. The police wouldn't listen. My firm wouldn't listen. I was completely, utterly alone, trapped. I gathered the papers and walked back to my desk, the eyes of the other associates on my back. They had heard her raised voice. Now they were whispering. I could feel it. The intern who was cracking up. I sat down in my chair. The bustling noise of the office, the ringing phones, the clatter of keyboards, the distant laughter from the break room seemed a million miles away. It was the sound of a world I was no longer part of. On my desk sat two things: the thick, leather-bound Illinois Criminal Code, filled with the rules and laws I had built my entire life around, and next to it, the slender manila folder with the name printed on the tab: Peterson, Arthur. For the first time in my life, I looked at the two of them, the law and the monster, and I couldn't tell the difference. They were the bars of the same cage, and I was locked inside with him. I gathered the papers from her desk. The weight wasn't in the paper, but in her dismissal. My skin felt cold. All the whispers I thought I heard from the other associates were probably real now. I was the intern who cried wolf, the unstable one who couldn't handle a simple pro bono case. The walk back to my desk felt 100 miles long. I sat down and just stared at my monitor. The Henderson motions a meaningless jumble of letters. I was done for the day. I was done with everything. I didn't pack up my things until the office was nearly empty. The cleaning crew was starting their rounds, their low chatter and the hum of their vacuums, a distant, normal sound from a world I didn't belong to anymore. I rode the elevator down alone, watching the floors count down. 42, 41, 40. Each descent pulling me further from the sky-high ambitions I once had, and deeper into the street-level muck of my new reality. The air outside was cool and damp, Chicago in the autumn. The streetlights cast long, watery reflections on the pavement. People hurried past, collars turned up against the wind, faces buried in phones or focused on the destination ahead. I just stood there for a moment outside the building's revolving doors, the leather of my briefcase handle a slick, familiar anchor in my hand. My throat was dry. I just needed to get home, just get to my apartment, lock the door, and try to think. I started walking towards the L station. My eyes scanned the flow of people, the river of anonymous faces. And then they stopped. Across the street, bathed in the orange glow of a single street lamp, a man was standing. He was perfectly still, a statue amidst the motion. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't waiting for a bus. He was looking directly at me. Arthur Peterson. He didn't wave. He didn't gesture. His hands were just in his pockets. He had a faint, almost pleasant look on his face, the kind of look a man might have while watching a boat sail by on the lake. Harmless, observant. My heart didn't just speed up. It slammed against my ribs with a hard, painful jolt. It felt like a punch from the inside. Don't panic. He lives in this city. It's a coincidence, just a coincidence. I broke eye contact. I turned and started walking faster. Not running. You don't run. Running makes you pray. I kept my eyes fixed on the entrance to the Monroe station half a block ahead. The glowing blue sign was a beacon. Safety. People. Witnesses. The sound of my own shoes on the wet concrete was too loud. I could feel his gaze on my back, a physical pressure. I didn't dare look back. To look back would be to acknowledge it, to confirm that this wasn't random. Down the stairs into the station. The smell of stale air and roasted nuts hit me. I swiped my transit card with a trembling hand, the turnstile clicking loudly as I pushed through. There was a train coming, the rumble growing louder,
The lights a white blur at the end of the dark tunnel. Good. I could get on, get away. I joined the small crowd on the platform, trying to make myself invisible. Another tired commuter in a dark suit. The train screeched to a halt, its brakes complaining. The doors slid open with a hiss. I let a few people get on ahead of me, then stepped inside, moving toward the center of the car.
I found a seat, my back to the direction of travel, and forced myself to look at the advertising panels on the opposite wall. A smiling dentist, a new brand of vodka, normal things. The doors chimed, a warning they were about to close. Just as they began to slide shut, a figure slipped through. My breath caught in my throat. It was him, Arthur Peterson. He moved with an unhurried grace, as if he had all the time in the world. He didn't look at me, not at first. He simply walked past my row and took a seat a few rows down, on the other side of the aisle, also facing me. The train lurched forward, pulling us into the tunnel. For the next 20 minutes, which felt like 20 years, he did nothing. He didn't read a newspaper. He didn't look at a phone. He just sat there, his hands resting on his knees, and watched me. His gaze wasn't aggressive. It wasn't menacing. It was worse. It was curious. It was patient. The stare of a biologist studying a specimen in a jar. Every time my eyes darted up, they met his, steady, unblinking. The other passengers were oblivious. A couple next to me was whispering and laughing. A student across the aisle had headphones on, head bobbing to a silent beat. The world was continuing, completely unaware of the invisible, high-tension wire stretched between me and that old man. The automated voice announced the stops. Next stop, Fullerton. The screech of the wheels on a turn, the rattle of the car. Every normal sound amplified the abnormality of his silence. I could feel sweat trickling down my spine, soaking into the collar of my shirt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout, "He's following me!" But what would they see? An old man sitting quietly on a train, and me, the intern who was cracking up. My stop, Belmont. The announcement was a release. I was on my feet before the train had fully stopped. I pushed past people, not caring about being polite. I just had to get off. I half stumbled out onto the platform and didn't stop. I walked, fast. Up the stairs, out into the night air. I didn't look back. I knew he'd be there. I could still feel the weight of his eyes on me. My apartment was 3 blocks away. I broke into a jog. The strap of my briefcase bounced against my hip. My lungs burned. The keys, where are my keys? I fumbled in my pocket as I ran up the front steps of my brownstone building. My hand was shaking so badly it took me 2 tries to get the key into the main building door. It clicked open. I slammed it shut behind me, leaning against it for a second, gasping for air in the dim, quiet hallway. 1 more flight of stairs. My own apartment. My own door. My lock. My sanctuary. I took the stairs 2 at a time, reached my door, number 3B. I plunged the key into the lock. It turned with no resistance. The deadbolt wasn't engaged. I froze, my hand still on the key. The door was unlocked. My mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. I must have forgotten this morning. I was distracted after the text message. I was exhausted. I was running late. Yes, that had to be it. I was just forgetting things. It was my own fault. Not him. It couldn't be him. Please, God, let it be my fault. I pushed the door open. The apartment was dark, silent. The only light was the ambient glow from the street filtering through the blinds. Hello? My voice was a weak croak. Nothing. Only the familiar hum of my refrigerator from the small kitchen.
I reached inside, my hand sliding along the wall until it found the switch, the light flooding the room. Everything looked exactly as I had left it. My coat was still slung over the back of the chair where I'd left it 2 days ago. The stack of mail was on the small entryway table. My law textbooks were in a messy pile on the floor next to the sofa. It was my mess. It was my life. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it nearly buckled my knees. I was wrong. I was just losing it. Sarah was right. The pressure was getting to me. The unlocked door was my mistake. Peterson on the train was a coincidence. A terrible, terrifying coincidence. That's all. I closed the door behind me, engaging the deadbolt this time. The solid thunk of the lock was the most reassuring sound I had ever heard. I dropped my briefcase on the floor, shrugged off my suit jacket. I needed a drink. I needed to sit down. I needed to breathe. I turned to walk toward the kitchen. And then I saw it. And the entire world stopped.
In the exact center of my small living room, placed perfectly in the middle of the worn hardwood floor, was my coffee mug. It was my favorite one, a heavy ceramic mug from my university bookstore, with the law school's crest on the side. The one I used every single morning. The one I had washed and left in the drying rack by the sink when I'd left for work. It was sitting there, on the floor, upright, empty, a silent testament. It was the same ritual, the same signature, the exact same thing I had watched him do on grainy security footage in the silent, violated homes of strangers. An object of personal routine, moved and displayed, a calling card, a message that went beyond words. I was here, in your life, in your space. I touched your things. This place you call safe? It isn't. He hadn't just followed me. He hadn't just watched me. He had been in my home. He had walked on my floors, breathed my air. He had been here, inside my final refuge. I wasn't a lawyer anymore. I wasn't a promising intern. I was a file. I was a project. I was the next name on a list. And the cold, sickening thought that crawled up my spine wasn't just that he had been here. It was that somewhere in the shadows of my own small apartment, maybe he still was. The silence in the room was a living thing. It was thick and heavy, pressing in on my ears, amplifying the frantic, rabid-fast thump of my own heart. The mug sat there, a piece of my life, taken out of its place and turned into a statement, a threat. I wasn't breathing. I'd completely forgotten how. Then a sound. So quiet I thought I'd imagined it. A soft, wooden groan from the direction of my bedroom. The kind of noise an old building makes at night. A settling sound. Except it wasn't. It was the sound of weight shifting. The sound a floorboard makes when someone tries very, very carefully to move without being heard. He was still here. Oh God, he was in the bedroom, waiting. My body moved before my brain could argue. I backed away from the living room, my movements slow, jerky, as if I were wading through water. My eyes were locked on the dark doorway to the bedroom. My hand, feeling its way behind me, brushed against the kitchen counter. Cold granite. Then wood. The knife block. My fingers closed around the handle of the largest knife, the chef's knife. The steel felt impossibly cold.
The weight of it, both terrifying and a tiny bit reassuring. A weapon. What was I going to do with a weapon? My mind screamed at me. Call 911. Call the police. Now. But what would I say? I could hear the dispatcher's bored voice already. Sir, is someone in your apartment? I don't know. Did you see them? No. Are you in immediate danger? There's a coffee mug on my floor, and I heard a creak. They'd send a car, maybe. By the time it arrived, he'd be gone, and I'd be another paranoid citizen. The unstable intern who was cracking under pressure. Sarah was right. I was cracking. No, this was real. The only way out was the front door. The door he was between me. I had to go through the bedroom to get to the fire escape. There was no other choice. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to hide under the kitchen table until morning. But the thought of him in there, separated from me only by a wall, listening to me breathe, it was worse. I had to know. I had to see. I held the knife out in front of me, my knuckles white. I took a step. The floor was silent under my socked feet. Another step. The refrigerator hummed, a lonely, mechanical sound in the dead air. I reached the bedroom doorway. The darkness inside was absolute. The faint orange light from the street didn't penetrate this far. My own apartment, and I couldn't see a thing. My focus narrowed to one single point in the darkness, the closet. The sound had come from there, I was sure of it. He was in the closet, hiding among my suits and shirts, waiting for me to fall asleep. Adrenaline surged, hot and sharp. It burned away the paralysis. I'm not the victim here. This is my home. My hand found the light switch. I flicked it on. The bedroom sprang into existence. My unmade bed, the pile of laundry in the corner, the law books on my nightstand. Everything was normal. Except the closet door was closed. I always left it a little bit open. I crept toward it, my own terrified reflection sliding across the mirrored door. A pale, wide-eyed stranger holding a kitchen knife. My breath was a ragged hitch in my chest.
I reached the door. My left hand, slick with sweat, hovered over the handle. It's a trap. He wants you to open it. He's waiting right behind it. But I had to. The not knowing was its own kind of torture. I took a deep, shuddering breath, braced myself, and yanked the door open. It slid aside with a loud rumble. I flinched back, the knife ready. Nothing. Just my clothes, hanging neatly in the dark. A row of dark suits. A jumble of shoes on the floor. No one was there. The space was shallow, too shallow for a man to hide from view. It was empty. A wave of dizzying relief washed over me. I'd imagined it. The sound, everything. The stress, the unlocked door, the coincidence on the train. It had all finally made me lose my mind. I was just... I always liked you, Alex. The voice was quiet, calm, conversational. It came from right behind me. You're so careful. I spun around, a strangled cry dying in my throat. Arthur Peterson was standing by the bedroom doorway. He must have been in the shadowed corner by the door the whole time. He had a faint, almost apologetic smile on his face.
In his hands, he held a thin piece of piano wire, stretched taut between two small wooden handles. He'd closed the bedroom door behind him while I was focused on the closet. There was no way out. Before I could even scream, he lunged. The wire was around my neck before I could register the motion. It wasn't a sharp pain. It was a sudden, absolute pressure, a crushing force that cut off all air, all sound. The knife clattered from my useless hand. My own gasp was a choked, wheezing failure. Black spots danced in my vision. My hands clawed at the wire, at his hands, but his grip was like iron. He was stronger than he looked, so much stronger. He was leaning his weight into me, forcing me backward. My heels stumbled on my own briefcase. We crashed to the floor, him on top of me, the pressure on my throat intensifying. I was dying. This was it. On my own bedroom floor. My lungs were on fire. My brain felt like it was swelling. This is my apartment, the thought came out of nowhere, a spark in the fading darkness. I know where everything is. My flailing left hand hit something hard and metallic, the base of my desk lamp. My fingers wrapped around it. With the last ounce of strength I had, I swung it backward, over my shoulder, aiming for where his head should be. There was a wet smack, followed by the shattering of the light bulb. The pressure on my throat lessened for a second, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. I sucked in a ragged, burning gasp of air. He grunted in pain, but the wire was still there. I twisted my body, a wild, thrashing motion of pure survival instinct. I managed to get one leg free and kicked upward, catching him in the side. We rolled, a clumsy, violent tangle of limbs. I ended up on top for a moment, hammering at his face with my fist. It was like hitting a bag of cement. My briefcase was right there, half open, its contents spilled across the floor. My thick, hard-bound textbook on constitutional law lay open. I grabbed it. It was heavy, a doorstop of a book. I raised it high over my head and brought it down on the side of his skull with everything I had. The sound was sickening, a dull, heavy thud. Peterson's body went limp beneath me. The wire fell away from my neck. He wasn't unconscious, but his eyes were glassy, unfocused. I scrambled away from him, crab-walking backward until my back hit the wall. I sat there, gasping, coughing, the raw rope burn feeling around my throat making every breath an agony. He was starting to stir. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, shaking his head slowly, that same placid smile returning to his lips. I wasn't going to win a second fight. I just needed to get out. I surged to my feet, grabbed the nearest heavy object, my bookshelf, and with a surge of pure panic, pushed it over. It crashed down with a deafening explosion of splintering wood and cascading books, blocking the doorway, trapping him for a few crucial seconds. I didn't wait to see what he'd do. I turned to the window, fumbling with the lock. My hands were shaking too badly. Come on, come on. It finally gave. I threw the window open and scrambled out onto the cold, rusty metal of the fire escape. I didn't take the ladder. I just dropped. The fall was only about 10 feet, but I landed badly, my ankle twisting under me. A hot spike of pain shot up my leg, but I ignored it.
I hauled myself up and ran. I limped and staggered down the empty street, waving my arms frantically at the distant headlights of a car. It was a police cruiser. It slowed, its lights flashing in the darkness. I practically threw myself in front of it. Weeks later, the world had returned to a semblance of normal, but it was a cheap imitation. The colors were muted. The sounds were all wrong. I was on leave from the firm, helping the district attorney's office put their case together. They treated me with a kind of gentle pity, the intern who survived. One afternoon, a detective named Miller asked me to look through some of the personal effects they'd recovered from Peterson's apartment. "Just see if anything jogs your memory," he said, sliding a cardboard evidence box across the table in a sterile interview room. The box smelled of dust and mothballs. Inside, it was a mess of junk. Old photographs, ticket stubs, a child's silver rattle, a woman's earring, trophies, souvenirs from lives he had dismantled. Underneath it all was a plain black file box. I lifted the lid. It was filled with manila folders, each one neatly labeled with a name. I pulled one out. Donnelly, James P. Inside was a photograph of a young man in a suit, smiling. With it were pages of handwritten notes detailing his daily routine, his place of work, a law firm in Seattle, his home address, his personal habits. I pulled out another. Chen, Evelyn, a young woman, a corporate lawyer in Miami. Same thing, photos, schedules, notes on her personality. Insecure but bright, lives alone. There were dozens of them, a collection spanning decades and the entire country. Young professionals, all living alone, all looking so much like me. The last folder was thicker than the rest. The tab was newer, the ink fresher. It read, "Hayes, Alex." My blood ran cold. I opened it. It was my life, cataloged. Photos of me going to work, photos of my apartment building, my schedule scrawled in his neat script, detailed notes on my cases, my performance reviews from the firm. How did he get those? At the very front, clipped to the inside of the folder, was an old faded photograph, a Polaroid. It showed a young man, maybe my age, with my same dark hair, my same build, my same jawline. He was leaning against a university wall, smiling a confident, easy smile. On the back, in faint pen, a few words were written. "My son, law school, class of '88. I just stared at it, the horror rising in me, a cold, black tide. It was a different kind of fear than the one I felt in my apartment. That was the fear of death. This was something else, something worse. Detective Miller put a heavy hand on my shoulder. His voice was low, tired. "That's Arthur Jr. He went missing during his first-year internship. They never found him. Peterson, he never recovered. He wasn't just killing people, Alex. He's been searching, testing them, looking for the perfect replacement." I looked down at the photograph, then at my own file. I wasn't just another name on a list. I wasn't a random victim. I was a candidate, and I had just passed the final brutal interview.